My mom sent me a plane ticket to spend my 25th birthday visiting her in Hawaii. My live-in boyfriend Patrick, who was much beloved by myself and my family, unfortunately couldn't get the time off of work, so he stayed behind in South Carolina. Essentially, I didn't hear from him for a couple of days, but was having too much fun to worry. On the night of my birthday at a fancy restaurant, I got a call from our neighbor who was freaking the fuck out. Our neighbor had witnessed my darling, hardworking, loving, upstanding boyfriend running around the property barefoot and shirtless, crying and carrying what was obviously a crack pipe into the woods behind the houses. Patrick had then been seen hauling random electronics and art out of our house and into my car, which he drove off in, still barefoot and shirtless, leaving the front door wide open. When the neighbor couldn't get a hold of me, he went to go close our door. Inside, the house was destroyed. He said that it looked like a hurricane had hit it. Thousands of dollars of irreplaceable antiques were shattered or torn to pieces, and everything of value was gone. At this point, I was sitting on the ground outside a very nice restaurant in a fancy dress, having a full-on panic attack. I asked the neighbor if he might have been mistaken. He sent me a photo of the living room and a picture of the empty driveway. I then proceeded to call Patrick immediately and only asked him if he was driving my car, which I had asked him not to do because his license was expired. He said no. I told him I knew that he was lying because the neighbor had sent me pictures of the driveway. He then told me he had to borrow it to go to the store. I told him what the neighbor had told me and about the picture of the living room. He tried to deny all of it, and finally, hysterical, I hung up and said that if he didn't call me sober in the morning, I'd call the police. His last words to me were, "I love you. I don't know why Remy is lying to you. I'm going to fucking kill him." Around 4 a.m. my phone rang. It was the cops. Patrick had stabbed our neighbor multiple times and tried to get away in my car. He was then caught, charged with attempted murder and possession of crack cocaine, and I pressed charges for the theft of my car. Over the next few days, it unfolded that he had maxed out the cash withdrawals on my credit cards, emptied my bank account, and I was evicted from my house due to him trying to murder a neighbor. My car was impounded as evidence. Everything I owned that I hadn't packed for a week in Hawaii was either destroyed or locked in a house I wasn't allowed in by the leasing company and the police. Because the accounts were in both of our names, I had no recourse. I was now not just broke, but thousands of dollars in debt, homeless and carless. I lost everything. Family heirlooms, collections I'd spent years accumulating, gifts from people who had passed away, everything. I decided to just stay in Hawaii and try to get my life back in order, since I was literally going home to nothing. I did exactly that, and my life is fine now 6 years later. Patrick died 2 years ago of a drug overdose shortly after getting out of prison. It was my 18th birthday, and they had put the cake in front of me but weren't singing yet. My friend walked up behind me to slam my face into the cake, but she didn't realize that the candles that were on it were lit. It wasn't the burning, they went out fast. I was surprised by the TARDIS my mom drew on the cake and my mouth was wide open, so when she slammed my head, a candle went down my throat. The melting candle wax really hurt, and the whole thing was briefly lodged in my throat. As soon as I came up from the head slam, I was choking, and I slid out of my chair sideways, managing to bang my head on the corner of the table. I had to go to the ER because the candle scratched my throat so bad on the way out I was coughing up blood, and because I needed 4 stitches in the side of my head from the corner of the table. I had a minor concussion, though it's disputed whether that happened when I hit the table or the floor. I later learned that she and my friends had planned a face slam into my cake they'd made, as friends do. Someone in the other room had told her it was quote-unquote cake time, and she genuinely thought it was the moment she was supposed to slam my face, not actual cake time. No hard feelings, though. Anyway, apparently in the rush to get me to the hospital, my dog Barbie got out of the house. We got a call while I was in the hospital that Barbie got hit by one of my friends on the way out of the driveway. My little brother actually blamed me because Barbie wouldn't have gotten out, nor would my friend have been leaving and hit her if it had not been for my stupid birthday. I turned 20-something this week. It better be good. Edit. Because so many have asked, this friend who pushed my face into the cake is still my best friend. She rode with me to the hospital, bought me ice cream the next day, and has promised to throw me the best birthday party ever this year. The girl who hit my dog was a total bitch anyway, and we no longer speak. Oh, and thanks to the people wishing me well. Hopefully this year will be more fun. My 27th birthday was the worst birthday that I have experienced so far. I planned to simply celebrate my birthday at home with a few of my friends, with us grilling meats and cooking pizza in our brick oven, drinking beer while listening to mellow tunes on a lazy afternoon. I had it planned with my friends for months and finalized with who's bringing what and who's doing what during our gathering. Since I still lived with my parents, I sought their approval to hold the party in our house weeks before the planned party, and here's how the storm starts brewing. A few days before my party, my dad tells me that he's invited a few friends over for the party as well. So I thought, why not? He owns the house anyway, and a few more well-wishers wouldn't hurt. Big mistake. On the day of the party itself, my father informed me that he had invited more people, and that there would be about 10 to 15 more guests arriving, and that they would greatly appreciate it if we could also cook the food they brought, since we already had booked the grill and oven. Since I was the one who was voted to be the pitmaster by my friends, I had no choice but to accept. I ended up grilling for about 9 hours, almost non-stop, without anyone offering to take my place for even a short little while. I didn't even have a chance to drink a cold beer because, as my father said it, you can't drink and drive because you'll be the one buying more drinks and food if we ever run out. Nor bond with my friends who I haven't seen for quite some time because of our own professional lives. The only breaks that I was able to enjoy was when I went to the restroom, when I rode my car to buy more beers for my father's guests, and my short meal breaks. My friends and I also endured the loud noises that these obnoxious drunks made as they sang their songs with a guitar. So there you have it, my worst birthday celebration so far. I had a string of bad birthdays from 16 to about 21, but the 16th is definitely the worst. So, when I was 11, my dad split and moved out of state. We got back in touch around 14 or 15, and over the years he had met a woman and eventually became engaged. She wasn't great, but she wasn't an evil stepmother yet, so I was okay with all of this. They decided, for some reason, to have their wedding the day before my 16th birthday. I was actually pretty pumped on this, as that would mean I got to see my dad on my birthday, which hadn't happened in 5 years. So, my brother and I fly to Iowa a few days before the wedding and basically walk into a war zone. Everyone is stressing out. My stepmom is acting like a royal bitch, and my dad, who we all thought was sober, had started drinking heavily again. Soon, I also realized that everyone in the family, like my younger brother, stepsisters, cousins, step-cousins, etc., had some part in the wedding. Everyone but me. So, the day of the wedding, I'm excluded from all of the wedding party activities, including sitting with my family at the reception. I'm basically ostracized the entire night. Still not totally down on the whole thing, I kept reminding myself tomorrow is my sweet 16th birthday, and it will be awesome to be with my family. The next day, my actual birthday, I wake up and join the family in the living room. My stepmom is there, and doesn't say a word to me. My dad says happy birthday and then proceeds to get wasted. I hang out all day, waiting for a cake or birthday dinner or something. No cake, no card, no presents, nothing. I suggest we all go see a movie or bowling or something together. My dad and stepmom refuse. I say, but you know, it's my birthday, right? My dad says, today's not your day, it's Becky's day. Becky is my stepmom. Becky says, you're being really selfish. That was that. A couple of years later, they decided to, quote, change their anniversary day because they felt it was too difficult celebrating an anniversary so close to my birthday, because I'm such a brat. A couple years after that, they got divorced. That was the best birthday present I could have asked for. My mother is now age 91 and going strong for 92. She was one of 10 children, all born at a home in rural Maine, USA. They were poor and life was tough. The focus was food, clothing, and warmth. Maine is freezing ass cold in the winter, and there was no money for birthday parties, especially for 10 kids. Flashback to a year and a half ago, my mother had been retired in Florida for decades. My dad passed years ago and she could no longer make it alone. I retired a little early and moved in to take care of her in her final years. I was the relative willing to step up. As she was approaching her 90th birthday, she confided to me that she had never had a birthday party. Never. And I'm crying as I type this. Well, I can goddamn fix this. We live in a condominium community of about 100 units. I reserved the community center. Relatives made plans to fly in and food was ordered. Decorations were purchased and of course the date was set. Word was spread in the community, and here was this little tiny old lady that was going to be 90 and never had a birthday party before, but not for long. So the big day arrives and the place was packed. The entire community showed up and they were spilling out the community center doors. There was food everywhere, gifts and cards stacked high, and my mother was sitting at the table of honor with this look that was one half delight and the other half shock. When the group began to sing happy birthday, I thought the roof was going to come off. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. Problem fixed. On my 21st birthday, I got an email that would change my life forever. I still remember the day quite clearly. I was living in Japan at the time and I was sitting at the bar having lunch when my phone dinged to let me know I had a message. It was an email from the DNA testing company with the results of my DNA test between myself and my son. There was a 99.99997% match. I was ecstatic, but the joy was fleeting. I called my then ex-girlfriend to deliver the news. I remember being so happy dialing that number. She answered, listened to what I had to say, then proceeded to tell me that it didn't matter. She doesn't like who I am. She doesn't like what I do for a living. She doesn't think I'd make a good father. I was taken aback. I thought she was kidding and tried to laugh it off, but she solidified it all by hanging up the phone. I'd never known a feeling so painful, and I imagine being shot hurts less than the words I had to hear on that call. I fought the good fight from then on, but I never talked to her again. Legal counsel recommended I not try to take her to court for custody because she will win. I have no support network. I live in a foreign nation, etc. I used to follow her Facebook and look at pictures of him, but after they started Timeline, all of her stuff became private. I've never even met him before. I can share what is both a horrible and delightful birthday story. Here in Koala Land, 18 is the equivalent to the USA's 21. I had absolutely no real friends in my final year of high school, not one in my grade. It was a big school, 330 students per year, and by friend, I imagined that to be someone you could talk to regularly, hang out with after school, set things on fire with, go to the same parties together, that kind of thing. Well, I didn't have that kind of friend. I was a shy loner. I sat by myself at lunchtime, and on occasion would sit near or a few seats away from other groups of guys who I knew were good-natured enough that I could listen in on their jokes and occasionally laugh at said jokes without drawing too much attention, and avoid any risk of being bashed or ridiculed or involved. So lunchtimes, these were my only social time, and it was pretend at that too. I couldn't handle social situations. Arguably, I still can't. In short, I was like the new guy in prison, my entire school career. I never had a birthday that was not just with my mom, my dad, a small cupcake, and my younger brother, all the way from 0 to 17 years old. If I was known to these kids, it was only because I would share what could be termed moments of friendliness, laughing at jokes, saying hello as I walked past, shared hatred of teachers, or whatever. I was never invited to their parties, never went to their houses. It was a friendly don't shoot on sight sort of thing. We just knew each other by name and left each other alone. Anyhow, so imagine years and years of this, and now it's the final year. And amidst this, my parents are wondering about me, especially my mom. It got to be that if my mom asked me how my day was, I would answer, "Oh, good," and change the topic. But occasionally my mom would stop me and really ask me who my friends were, and I never had a true answer that didn't leave me feeling cold. I didn't want to sound like a loner with no friends, not to my parents. it would sound like I was a loser. I was such a loner that a teacher once actually held me back in a class to ask me why I never spoke to anyone, even trying to actually give me a lesson on making friends. That didn't go so well because A, I had a crush on the teacher, and B, I was horrified that someone had spotted my well-kept invisibility. And C, I tried a few approaches, but nobody wanted to be friends with a guy with hippie parents that didn't own a TV or any kind of game console, and who were also terrible at sports, bad at telling jokes, and had no idea about girls. Anyhow, point being, back on topic, I felt like I couldn't help it. I didn't want to disappoint my parents anymore. So I got into the habit of mentioning the names of several of the guys that I overheard telling such various jokes or stories at lunch. Guys that I wished I was friends with, and of the 2 or 3 other loners I knew, weaving lies, exaggeration, and fact to make out as if I was in these groups talking it up at lunchtime and otherwise having a great time. I even repeated said stories as if these funny little happenings happened to a close friend of mine. I thought that this little bit of lying would ensure that I was left alone. I didn't know how to make friends, and I didn't know what was wrong with me. And I didn't want my parents treating me special just because I couldn't figure out this whole social thing. Unfortunately, it didn't work exactly according to plan. My mom started secretly taking notes on who I was talking about. Robert, the funny guy that is actually depressed, Ben, the crazy friend, or Chris, who stole things, and began plotting something terrible. I later found out that, much like a crazed ex-detective vigilante, my mother, who doesn't speak excellent English, kept a logbook of all the people I talked about, and actually tried to figure out who was exactly friends with her son. Get this, she literally plotted some sort of spider string network diagram rating level of friendliness, cross-referencing names with addresses in our school student directory against frequency of use in my stories. She then tabulated the results, wrote letters to the targeted kids, and invited them to my surprise 18th birthday party to be held at a Chinese restaurant. My family thinks Chinese food is delicious, so this was apparently a great birthday venue for a bunch of high school kids. Anyhow, so on my birthday, end of the school year, my parents decided to take me to dinner for my birthday. I argue, why can't we just do what we do every year? It's not worth the fuss. But they throw me in the car and here I am, and here we are. I walk in and bam, about 20 kids at the biggest table in the joint standing up and singing happy birthday to me. And the kicker is, they really went to town, screaming my name and shit like I'm their best friend. My parents are really impressed and pushed me forward. I'm terribly embarrassed, shocked, and mortified. My mom and dad and brother start laughing and just run away, and I sit down with what turns out to be about 20 kids. I had taken certain liberties with naming who I was friends with, and had named a collection of the funniest guys, the most fun guys, and a handful of other loners, or even worse, kids that had been bullied. So I'm sitting there with half the kids I admire as fun, funny, cool people that I wasn't actually friends with, and the other half are nerdy or loner kids that deserve to be invited to the party, and they were all brought together to celebrate me. I sit down. They are all grinning. I end up apologizing for them having to come see me, and as my parents walk out the door, the cool kids slap me on the back, congratulate me, and pull a giant bottle of Johnny Walker out from under the table. As everyone cheers again quite loudly, and I pretty much cannot remember the rest of the night. I had never tasted alcohol before then. I remember being lectured that alcohol is a great social lubricant by my new friends, then it all went quite hazy. Apparently, 1, I drank the entire bottle of Walker within 5 minutes. 2, I soon couldn't stop making speeches extolling the virtues of friendship. 3, I kept jumping out of my chair and hugged every person that came into the restaurant that night, about 130 people. 4, I went around towards peak hour and introduced myself as yes, I am the guy, I am the birthday guy, to every other diner and their family in the establishment, even congratulating a grandmother at the adjoining table on reaching her advanced years of so many birthdays, remarking that I congratulated her because I too was looking forward to many more birthdays as I was a real douchebag. And 5, I kept slapping the proprietor on the back, I think. I know all of this because I later found out it was videotaped. My new friends were quite incredulous, amazed, and most of all, they all had a great time, despite or because of my craziness. Luckily, my parents came to pick me up before I started headbutting people. I apparently tried to headbutt my brother, and on the way home I was just giggling a lot. The next day I woke up. I had no idea what had happened. I just felt very spaced out and hungover, blank. School had ended. Funnily enough, I had not made friends at school, but because of my antics, I was warmly greeted as if I was an old friend, years and years later by those kids that had attended my party. It even got me an invite to a really good ex-school soccer team years later. It was as if I was their friend, and it was funny because somehow my lies had manifest the fun, friendly, crazy kids as my friends. Kids I had only admired from a distance, and a couple of loner, geeky, nerdy kids who I didn't count as my friends before, but had slipped their names into my stories because I figured, hey, if they have no friends, they might as well be mine. And they deserved and got a party too. Somehow, despite each half not really knowing each other, by all accounts, they all had a fun time, and I was somehow cemented into the memories of these kids as a friend, and I barely remember any of it. I only remember my time at school not having friends, and whenever I run into those guys, I am greeted warmly and reminded of my 18th. Somehow, pretending to have friends netted me friends, but I can't remember much of it. Years later, I found in a drawer dozens and dozens of envelopes and letters of reply to my mom. I found that actually, of the 20 that did attend, about 30 had been invited, and nearly all of those 10 not attending had actually written back to my mother to apologize for not being able to attend. That really touched me. And so I wondered, and this was years later, I was at university at this time, what the hell did my mom write? I read the letters my mom wrote and they said, "Dear X, I'm writing to you because I'm not sure who my son's friends are, but he had mentioned you in his stories. If you are his friend, I would love to throw a surprise birthday for him at X on X because it is his 18th and he has never thrown a birthday party before. I don't know any of his friends. If you know who his friends actually are, could you please let me know who they are so I can invite his friends? Thank you, my mom." Mom still thinks these people were my friends all along, and somehow they actually are. If it wasn't for her effort, no one would have attended. So lesson, you have to make an effort to make friends, even to the extent of being bloody honest and asking people for advice on who and how to make friends. If all else fails, ask your mom.